Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to talk about Shadows of Change for hopefully the last time in this review format, because now we have received patch 6.1, which many people, myself included, are calling Shadows of Change 3.0. The reworks and updates that we were expecting for Kislev and a little bit for TZEENTCH. Not so much for TZEENTCH, to be honest, but Kislev desperately needed some big changes. So the question now lies, about a year after the release of Shadows of Change and multiple updates to fix them up and actually bring that DLC back up to value where it was expected, is Shadows of Change worth the money now? As you can imagine, there is quite a lot to talk about today, but I feel like it's quite important, as many people have been looking towards this to finally justify buying the DLC. But before anything, a big thank you to our sponsor, Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming is a platform where you'll be able to buy loads of different video games at discounted rates. Those that have released, those that are due to release, there's always a very good deal. Gaming is getting more and more expensive lately, especially if you've seen stuff like wild prices that developers are putting just to play a game 3 days early, or just for the sake of it. But you should always get yourself a good deal if you can, especially if you play Warhammer Tabletop, because, yeah, let's be honest, those armies are not cheap. I just recently got myself Sir Sissel, and yeah, quite expensive for a character. Not only that, but we do have a giveaway going on. Win the game of your choice. All you have to do is click in the link in the description below and sign up. You don't even have to make a purchase. This is something that we've been doing for a number of months now, and I'm really quite happy with the partnership that I've been having with Instant Gaming. It seems that you guys have been making good use of that too. It's a company that I've used to buy my own games too, which I think is quite important because, again, Warhammer the Old World is not cheap. And yeah, buying from this link does support the channel at no extra cost to you, which I think is also quite important too. It's a nice relationship and I'm glad that it's continuing. With that being said, thank you to Instant Gaming for the sponsoring of the video. Now let's jump back into the regularly scheduled programming. Before anything, I'm not going to do like massive overviews like I did in the first and second review regarding all the new content and stuff, because I've already released a massive rework video which you can find on the channel. That's mostly revolving around Kislev or TZEENTCH, but the idea here is to talk about everything together and see if it's actually worth the money now, because I know a lot of people did hold back from buying this DLC the first time, and even some during the second time, because a few things weren't really up to par, but a lot seems to have changed. Not only that, but 6.1, the patch releasing today, is going to split up Shadows of Change into 3 individualized DLCs, just like the Thrones of Decay DLC and Omens of Destruction, so I do feel it's important to talk about them in their own specific parts, to say, well, you know, is this side worth it, is the other side worth it, and just general talk about Shadows of Change as a whole. We'll start with Grand CATHAY, arguably the faction in Shadows of Change that felt the most complete after the second iteration of that DLC. You see, Grand CATHAY has always been in a good spot, considering that they've gotten minor updates over the lifespan of the game so far, and to be honest, everything just felt pretty solid for them compared to the monogod factions and even Kislev. The legendary lord Yuan Bo felt like a normal Cathayan lord, but had a mechanic that was extra for him. So you already had a familiar style of play, just something that could further improve the settlements that you already had and made them a lot stronger. Leading to your faction getting very, very powerful very, very quickly. He's since been nerfed, but in not a bad regard, so he's still very, very strong. A lot of people don't like the character too much because, oh yeah, you know, he's just another dragon, they're very samey, but the thing is, those are the main leaders of Grand CATHAY, so that was good to be expected. His execution ability is very strong overall. I would say he's got a better campaign compared to the other 2 available Cathayan dragon children, because you're able to have a choice if you want to stay in Lustria, if you want to go back to Grand CATHAY, and just having a mechanic. The 2 other ones from base game are decent, but they're lacking something a little bit extra. It looks like there's going to be a bit of a push for that because they've been slightly updated. Well, Miao Yin was, Zhao Ming is still kind of lacking something, but Yuan Bo definitely has a little bit of that it factor that makes him just a lot more fun. The units added in with Shadows of Change 1.0 and 2.0 are very, very good. In all honesty, there's nothing here that is considered essential, I would say, but they were add-ons. Essentially, if you wanted more, you would get this DLC. And I think this was a good system. The Jade Lion, pretty cool. You had the Onyx Crowman, which I still think should have been a sort of hero, but honestly, they work quite well. And overall, just mostly monsters here. The Lord choice and the hero choice are pretty damn good. The legendary hero I've started to get more used to after playing a little bit more with it. But overall, I think that you look at this like the additions to a Skaven DLC. You just want to add more and more fun toys to it. If you like Grand Cafe, you're going to like these units. It's as simple as that. I don't think there's any faults after the 2.0 additions. Now, is the Grand Cafe side worth it? I would say yes. Keep in mind that these DLCs are now being separated, but if you do want to support the channel, you can actually get the whole of Shadows of Change for 54% off with my link in the description. But individualized, if you haven't bought Shadows of Change yet and you just want the cafe stuff, yeah, it's more than worth it. You get a bunch of units that you can use with both factions. You get a lot of replayability there. I like Yuanbo more than the other two. I've said that already, but it's just one of those characters that maybe if I want to feel like playing Grand Cafe right now, if I'm not using a modern faction to add in, I'll go with Yuanbo because maybe I want to go back to Grand Cafe, or maybe I want to just do my campaign in Lustria. I think out of the theming, Yuanbo wins in Shadows of Change, getting the most out of everything. There'd be no major reworks for Grand Cafe, and I think a lot of people are like, well, you know, they should have gotten something. I think they will get something in the future, because it's very obvious. You know, we know there's 5 Dragon Children in the Monkey King, so we currently have 3 Dragon Children. There's going to be more Cathayan DLC, that's for certain, and they didn't need the help now when they will need the help in the future. It is important to note that they have gotten a new unit in 6.1. This is the Nangar Grenadiers, and while they're not attached to Shadows of Change, this is a free unit, everyone gets access to them. They're already getting something every now and then. To be honest, Cafe is in a pretty good spot. Roster-wise, like, they've got a little bit of everything. What they do need is an engineer hero, but getting some Grenadiers is always nice because they're a pretty excellent shock trooper. TZEENTCH. This is a pretty interesting one because TZEENTCH as a race was really hyped up to be something really special, but ended up kind of falling a little bit flat. Well, most cases, this happened to pretty much everyone. What we did see is an addition of a rather unique legendary lord, and some hit and misses for the units, let's be honest there. This is when people started getting pretty angry, I think, and I really don't blame them. I still have this little bit of an issue with TZEENTCH, but it definitely has gotten a lot better through weirder ways. Just as planned, I guess. The Legendary Lord is the Changeling, a rather impressive character because he's completely unique to every other faction in Total War Warhammer. He doesn't Empire build, he instead just starts up cults and he takes the form of other characters, getting their abilities, getting their strengths and weaknesses. He's awesome, in all honesty. The problem is, and still to this day, he's a one and done campaign. You will play him once, and then you will not want to play him again. And it's a massive shame because there is replayability there. What Creative Assembly really need to do with that is just allow him to pick his starting position, right? There are a lot of different theaters of war, and seeing as this is a character that's known for sowing discontent, if you started your campaign and then picked the theater so you would be teleported there, it would just add a lot of flavor, would add the reason to play him again and again. That's literally my only issue with the Changeling, and that's always only been my issue with the Changeling. The units and everything else added isn't too bad. We're looking at the 2.0 version of Shadow Change at this point, so Chaos Lord of TZEENTCH, pretty cool. The Hero of TZEENTCH also pretty decent. The Cockatrice, the Mutilated Vortex Beast, and the Changebringers being a kit bash unit, but an iconic one from the Storm of Chaos campaign. Overall, very, very cool units. The Zangors, there was a bit of drama regarding them because while they were very good to use and they were kind of Bestigor style, they were nerfed for 2.0, and you know, we did see the concept art of them with beaks, but it looks like Games Workshop slapped that down. And then the Centaurs of TZEENTCH, I think that's the biggest problem. Nobody wanted that. If anything, Centaurs fell more in line with Sinesh also, so it just felt like this was them really trying to find some units, despite the fact that there's still a fair amount of TZEENTCH units that just haven't been added into game yet. The thing is, there is a lot of value here, because while you might not be too keen on playing the Changeling, these units are usable in a lot more places than other races and factions in DLC. Not just with Kairos, but also with the Warriors of Chaos factions that have TZEENTCH alignment, and also the Beastmen. So you did get a lot of extra uses, and that always adds some extra value. Still, people wanted something, at least for TZEENTCH as a whole, and we finally gotten that in 6.1. Kairos has gotten a nice update to make him much more unique and a lot more powerful too, which is great. At the end of the day, that's something that was needed to be done. And not only that, but there was a general update for TZEENTCH, meaning that certain generic characters are easier to pick up through your campaign. Your Heralds of TZEENTCH and your Lords of Change are also a lot better now too, which makes them a little bit more usable. I still kind of favor the Demon Prince, but I think that's just me being kind of used to the Demon Prince more than anything else. But Kairos now feels playable now, and this is something that people were expecting when it came to the release of the original DLC. TZEENTCH didn't need a rework in a very similar vein that Khorne didn't need a rework, just some updates here and there. I still think that TZEENTCH could do with a little bit of an update generically, but other than that, everything feels alright. So should you buy the TZEENTCH side of the DLC? If you're someone who plays a lot with the Chaos factions, it's probably going to be a yes. Again, the benefit of the Chaos DLCs affecting multiple races around the same alignment makes them more valuable overall. You get a lot more from it. So even if you don't have much intention of playing with TZEENTCH at the moment, you do have intention of playing with Beastmen or maybe with the Warriors of Chaos, you're going to use those units. They're going to be useful for you. I don't see anything bad about this DLC, especially if it's going to be like £7 at this point. What I would say is, yes, they do need to give the Changeling a change there. Yeah, you know, no pun intended, to choose a starting theatre, and that's it. Like, it's not even asking for a rework for the Changeling. I know that Creative Assembly did that statement thing, but people don't want a rework for the Changeling. It's just they want to be able to pick the theatre. That's simple, and it's done. And here we go into Kislev. This is where things get a little bit more strange, because Kislev is a redone version of Kislev. It's not the Kislev that we knew from 6th edition during the Storm of Chaos, but it also kinda is, because the foundations of the lore have remained. So everything that we knew about Kislev was subject to change as DLC and also the base game released. Redesigns of units, for example, renaming of characters, completely new characters. Yes, CATHAY was a similar situation, but Kislev had models, Kislev had novels, and people were just a bit weirded out by the choices that were made. For example, the legendary lord is Mother Ostankya, who is a character who might be Baba Yaga, but was considered to be a completely new character. She is a part of the land of Kislev itself. It was very heavily engraved into that lore that we got for this new character in quotation marks, but she was never in Kislev in terms of playstyle, which I think threw a lot of people off, myself included. She's very, very unique to the point that she is the only Hag Lord available with a brand new lore of magic that was introduced in 2.0, and she focuses around hexing and buffing up enemies and yourself. There's a lot to do with that. There's still a lot of expectations to be had for this character because people wanted the fabled chicken house that existed in the lore, but apparently that's no longer a thing anymore. It took a while, but I think a lot of people started warming up to Ostankya when 2.0 came out, with all the magic, with all the additions of the generic hag witches too, because it was important for her to have her coven. The additions to the roster were fairly curious, mostly because it just felt kind of mishmashed, even with the 2.0. We got the Druzina, which was pretty much as close as we're going to get to the Unggols. We got finally the Hag Witch with a number of laws of magic, the Lore of Beast, the Lore of Death, the Lore of Shadows, and the Lore of the Hag. The Akshina ambushes and also the Kislevite warriors also felt part of Kislev, but then we got the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts, which was more of a primal thing. They're not really a unit associated with one faction, which thankfully they're also available for the Beastmen, but Lore of Magic, a creature of the wind, is agnostic more than anything else. The Thing in the Woods is more of a chaos creature. For some reason they've been purified. I'm not too keen on that. I still never will be. And then the Frostworms came out of nowhere. A lot of people were expecting a giant frostbat, myself included, but it looks like that's been omitted from the new lore. Overall, you do get a bit of a mix which works, but also feels a little inconsistent. And I say that because in most cases there's a theme, and with that theme you get the units attached to it. That being said, all of the units have their uses and you will be using them fairly often. Barring too much of the Kislevite warriors, I think, but I think a lot of people just go with the basic Kossars because they're multi-use and Kislev is supposed to be mostly focused around hybrid units. Now, the big drama that fell around Shadows of Change was promised reworks, and those reworks never really came. Until very recently, where we've had a massive rework for Kislev. There is a video on the channel that was released just yesterday focusing around that. It's about 20 minutes long. There are a lot of fundamental changes coming to Kislev, which is making that faction actually in line with everyone else. My speculation is Kislev might have been one of the last factions worked on, which explains why Kislev felt so odd, and I mean through the base game. Every other faction had a level of competency in terms of like playstyle and so on, whereas Kislev just felt empty. And that's a bad thing, because a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, you know, just wait for DLCs, but DLC should not make a base game faction playable. Sure, the reworks coming in for like the Warriors of Chaos and stuff have done that, but that's a separate game. Keep in mind that they were released in Game 1 and they were playable in Game 1. It's just how the game evolved hasn't really kept up with that speed. But this is the last game for the trilogy, and Kislev should have come out feeling fantastic. Or at least close to, and just getting minor updates. Like, for example, Nurgle has recently gotten, the Khorne faction has just recently gotten to. So I would have put Kislev in the near unplayable section until very recently with 6.1. So would I recommend the Kislev part of the DLC? Honestly, and I'm saying as bluntly as possible, yes. Now, yes, this is the only time I would recommend anything Kislev content related to buy, because there was just no fun playing Kislev. You get the benefit of the Incarnate being also used with the Beastmen, by the way, but you should never buy it just specifically because you like playing the Beastmen. This is in a much better spot now. Kislev finally got the attention it so rightfully deserved. Mother Ostanka being able to teleport back is a great thing. You've also got the fact that now all the mechanics have basically changed to just be more player-friendly rather than this stupid race that they took from a Total War Saga Troy. It's literally just copy-pasted. It feels great. It feels unique. It feels like Kislev. There is still lack of an FLC Legendary Lord, but I doubt that we're going to ever see one. Everyone was expecting Egrim Van Horstman, and I think we're not going to see him, at least just yet. They did a legendary hero instead, and then afterwards, to kind of fill out that slot, they decided to do the sled for Catherine, which I very much do appreciate. It would have been nicer if we would have had that, but I imagine that the amount of money spent on creating a legendary lord would not be able to justify it, considering that they've had to do not one, but 2 extra patches just to kind of finish out these issues with Shadows of Change. I do think that we'll see Egrim in the future, though, likely in another DLC, if we get that hypothetical End Times DLC that's been rumored. It's possible, so I'm not going to just say, yeah, he's not coming. It's one of those things where it would have been nice to have him before, but I guess better that he arrived after the shit show, because at least now they know, yeah, there's big expectations for that character, rather than him coming in just a weird state and just not fun to play around with. Who knows for the future, but at least everything else seems okay. We've had a good 2.0, that one worked well to add in the units and so on, and 6.0 is fixing with Kairos, alongside with a massive change for Kislev, so yeah, I think that this is in a pretty good spot right now. Some of you might be wondering why I'm doing a third and final review, but honestly, there was a desperate need for a big patch just like this, a massive patch to fix up the core fundamental issues with Kislev, and a small update to Kairos at the very least, just to finally say, we're going to put Shadows of Change behind us. All the drama that kicked off a long time ago can finally put to rest. Now, again, I do have to stress out here, we can forgive, but we must never forget. This mistake must never happen again for Total War Warhammer, 40k, whatever comes out, right? We never know what the next game could be. It could even be Total War Hyenas. But at this point, the Shadows of Change drama, I feel, is now done. It's fairly obvious that Creative Assembly have learned, because Thrones of Decay, the next DLC, was absolutely fantastic in terms of quality. Omens of Destruction, the DLC after that, wasn't as good. We have to keep that in mind. But if the next DLC, the hopefully Sinesh DLC, falls in line between Omens and Thrones, then I will be happy. Because what we need is a good DLC with clear, thought-out planning, good units, good characters, and actual proper content. The value for money must always be there. This DLC will now be split up in 3 individualized parts, so you can actually buy them whenever you want and what order you want them at too, which I think is quite important, because there's some people who are honestly just interested in the Chaos stuff. I wouldn't blame you, the Chaos stuff is very, very cool, or the CATHAY stuff, and you can get your deals in the same format as Thrones of Decay and also Omens of Destruction. You can also get a pretty good discount on my affiliate link if you want that. Just plugging that once again, because at the end of the day, get the best deals that you can get. It's always the best thing that you can do. This is a very DLC heavy franchise. But yeah, I can now with full conscience recommend Shadows of Change. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I'll see you all again very, very soon. And have a great day, guys. I shall be live a little bit after this video, or maybe just before. Yeah, I'm still trying to get everything sorted. I've got some other stuff going. But on twitch.tv/thegreatbookofgrudges, we're playing with Kislev. Pop by, say hi, have a little bit of a chat. But if not, I'll see you tomorrow for another brand new video. See ya!